Good afternoon, Teresa, and how are you?
I am good, thank you.
It's
Yes.
nice to have you this afternoon with me on a journey to the kingdom with Ken. And
Thank you.
it's long in coming, but happy nonetheless that we are able to make it today. And I hope that you will pour out your heart as you so feel. Feel free, feel relaxed,
Yes, already feel relaxed and yeah,
and
definitely a pleasure to be
just
with you. A pleasure.
as as the saying goes, as the spirit leads you.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
Teresa, tell me your name, who you are, what you're about, where you're from.
Yes. Yeah, Teresa, Lavinia, and I am mum to twins, Hannah and Jacob, who are my blessings. I give thanks to God for every day. And they are 12 this week. So we are
12
celebrating
years.
our birthday weeks. They are 12 this week, and I am 50 this week.
You're joking.
So we are, yeah, celebrate. We're going to be celebrating this week, and it's wonderful that they came 2 days before my birthday. They came premature. They were born at 32 weeks. So I was so thankful to conceive because I did struggle, and so when to know I was having twins, and then to find I was having a boy and a girl, I immediately thought, what a blessing. God heard and answered my prayers, and that's why they have biblical names, Hannah and Jacob.
But you said that you have twins, and I know you couldn't have the twins on your own. So, did you pick up somebody on the road? How did it happen?
Yes, so their dad, yes, I was with their dad for quite a few years, and we did struggle to conceive. Yeah, thanks for the reminder. And yes, in that journey of knowing I wanted to have a family, knowing that we wanted to have a family, then yeah, I prayed and prayed. It took time, but prayers were answered, and Hannah and Jacob are just such a gift and a blessing. And in the journey of being thankful with having Hannah and Jacob is born with a rare syndrome. So Jacob has a disability. He's born with a very rare syndrome, and he's also deaf, which is a characteristic of the rare syndrome. So yeah.
So before you proceed, so being a young mother and having to deal with a child with disability, can you just share with us? Did that hit you by storm? Giving birth and is something that I think every mother is looking forward to have a healthy child, and to know after giving birth that as the years increased, you get to know that your child has some level of disability. How did you cope with that? What was the coping mechanism that helped you to first to accept it? Because it's one thing to get a news, it's another thing to accept it and to decide on how you're going to move forward in accepting it and starting to adapt and carrying on from there. So how did you?
Yeah, I think I can speak on behalf of all mums when we are, given this gift, and I see it as a gift. But of course, at the time, the challenge is real, and it's so real, and it hits you so hard, so fast. There isn't time to think. You have to just go into the mode of learning to just put so much focus on this child that has healthy. With Jacob, it was health issues. So much focus into the care, and plus with having twins, I felt even it was more increased because there was also making sure that Hannah was also given the same time, attention, but at the same time Jacob had many times in hospital, a lot of time in hospital procedures, and I can say honestly, Ken, with most mums that I share with, we don't have time to think of anything other than just to do what we need to do in the care and making sure that the child is attending appointments, hospital procedures. There's very little time to really think. It's only when sometimes you share with another mum that you then think outside of that zone that you're in at that journey that you're in at that time to then see what you're doing. Because at the time when you're doing, you just all you know how to do is just to do everything around what the child needs health wise, and then yes, of course, the acceptance of it all came. There was a lot to take on board. There was knowing that he had a syndrome, but they didn't know what syndrome it was. As I said, it's a very rare syndrome, so he wasn't diagnosed till he was 2. And then there was the deafness, which then started to make sense as to why he was deaf. So these things then started to be answered.
Starting to manifest
They were
itself.
starting to, yes. But in that time, I think more than anything, what we focus on is the health, is making sure that, they are coming through the different stages that Jacob went through, quite a few hospital procedures. And then you just start feeling, for me, he became my strength in seeing him come through the procedures. And thanking God, that's when I started to really pray more around Jacob's health, the procedures, the strength to go through, and seeing him go through so much as a small baby, because immediately after 11 weeks it was quite clear there were growth abnormalities. So from 11 weeks was when he had his first hospital procedure, and then that continued until he was 5, continuously. I think you just learn how to just cope, and you draw strength seeing them go through what they go through. But they do go through, they're so resilient, they are. It's amazing to see. It was amazing to see Jacob, and I know, just speaking of some of the mums that I speak to as well who go through the same journeys, but we draw strength from their strength because they're so resilient.
So in other words, if I'm to understand you, it is so important as a mother who have a child in that form of disability to engage and basically to feed on each other's experience, because it really nourish and help you to carry through. Because probably, am I to probably say, if you did not have probably the guidance and the testimony of other mothers and what they go through day by day, then probably it could have really been something else.
100%. That's why I can hear as I'm talking. I'm constantly thinking about other mothers and their journey and their experience, because that is how we do draw strength from each other. Because if there's one thing I can say, unless you are going through that journey, unless it is a lived experience, even family, close people by, unless they are living that experience, the understanding is just not there at all. No, you have.
Would you say probably that is the reason why that you find the way some people respond to children, and not just children, we're talking about all forms of disability, and the way sometimes some people respond to these people is because they don't have the living experience and knowledge about it. Because even those who are trained to provide care to those people or these children or adults with disability, even them at some point in time you see that they get fed up and they overreact. But you now being, and even you as the child's mother, even you sometimes you can feel that way, because it is just not an easy situation. But tell me, as the years go by, has it become any easier to deal with the situation? And as time goes by, do you think that information is already available, that if something he is going through, that it is easy to access information, because you don't know everything in relation to his situation, but information is what is going to guide you and know how to respond. So, would you care to tell us, how do you access information? Is it coming from the doctor? Do you buy books? Do you go on the internet and do research? Or is it that you just do it as it unfolds, then you just approach it?
Again, it's around a network of mums, parents, carers who are experienced, and we learn from each other's experiences. We then learn from each other if I learn information, then I will be able to share that with another parent, and that is how we really do feel.
So it's basically networking.
It's networking, and that's exactly it. The information, and exactly as you said, and again, it really goes down to lived experiences, sharing our lived experiences. Even professionals, unless they can have all the interest in teaching and being in a profession around our children with special needs, but again, if they haven't got that lived experience, they will struggle too. They will not be able to really fully understand our journey and fully understand the needs of the child. And then, we're not really signposted. The information is not there for us to say, right, that's when we go in that direction to learn about a child. I'm a hearing mum with a deaf child. What do I know about the deaf community? I'm relying on professionals to guide me in how to now raise a deaf child. But again, it sadly fails because the information is not freely given. It's not readily available. So again, we have to depend on I'd have to then talk to another mother who has a deaf child who's that much older than Jacob for me to learn from her experiences. So the network of parents, and that's why, I feel, and for me, as you're saying, how are things as we're going along the years now? Jacob is now 12. My faith, I thank God.
He's 12 now.
Yeah, so when they're going to be 12 on Tuesday, it's constantly changing with his needs as he gets older now, and with speech delay, global development delay, they call, there's all these different labels, but with his level of understanding, as he's getting older, it just changes, but I thank God in the journey, in what I'm learning. And that's the thing, you see, I really do see that God creates our children for us to learn from for a reason. They have differences in their learning and the way they process and do things. And Jacob being deaf, it's all for us to learn, because Jacob is having to learn and be a different child because he's deaf. So I thank God for the learning that I am receiving, the patience that I feel. The patience, and you're right. At times it is testing for us parents as well, and we can sit and share. I can sit and share with other mums whose children are deaf, whose children are autistic. Jacob has traits of autism, and it's testing each day. But there is the level of patience, because there's also this wonderful way that you see who they are, the way they process, the way they do things in a very different way, the way their understanding is, and you sometimes look at them and think it's just genius, really, because Jacob, he's learning through his love of Jacob learns through music, and our children will show that they learn in a very different way from a typical developing child. I've got Hannah to look at to see the clear difference in their learning. But then that's
how old is Hannah?
So they're twins, yeah. So
twins. They're 12 years. Yeah.
Who is at secondary? They're both at secondary school. Hannah is very advanced in her love of English and reading, and she's writing stories. Jacob is the same. They're twins, 12, and Jacob is only now just learning to write. Jacob is only now just learning to read. So there's a big difference.
A big gap.
The learning is there. It's very clear that Jacob's learning is so different in comparison, but then he's got his own way of learning, and his love of passion of music is how he's starting to learn. In his understanding of music artists, he can retain the names of different music artists. And there are children who are autistic. They will process. They will retain things in a way that is it's beyond belief sometimes. because then they are also, Jacob will still have that label. He has a learning delay, a learning disability, as they say with our children who are autistic, because they're not necessarily learning the typical way, but it's not really celebrated that they learn in their own very special way, you see. So
tell me, because I mean, you have said quite a bit, and it just it brings to sharp focus. God now has to really come into the picture. Without God and without knowing who He is to give you that level of patience and tolerance, that means there's a big void, and it leaves it to probably ill-treating, behaving out of character towards that child, because you just don't know who God is. And sometimes I've heard people speak sometimes to children simply because of what they are facing as parents. And one may gravitate to the child and show that child love, and you may find the other parent may just distance himself or herself from that child because they think, oh, it's like that child is a curse. You understand? And they treat that child so horrible. So what do you have to say to parents who have children with autistic or any form of disability as to their love and the involvement of God to really draw them close to that child as opposed to distancing themselves?
Well, as in faith and knowing what God will always guide us to do is the power of love, isn't it, really? And that's why I was really encouraged with one of, just with listening to you, Ken, and how much I am always inspired and encouraged by your word that you share. And one of the shares that you sent recently was about, the importance of loving yourself, and I think sometimes what happens is, when we're given a child with a disability, there is that immediate feeling on self of what did I do, or, just what we can sometimes do to ourselves in blame and, just being so uncertain, because there's so many questions that you may have around, why your child, as you said, this whole journey, your pregnancy, the child comes and there's, whether it's a syndrome, autistic, with Jacob, he's deaf, there is, in the strength, God's asking God for the guidance, for the strengthening, then the love and patience that we need to show ourselves, and then, looking at God and just asking for the guidance and the strength around understanding your child, because all they want is to be loved. There is the power of love, isn't there? And then with that patience and showing that love, that regardless of their disability, regardless of, the challenges they may present with their behaviour and everything else, the more in my experience with Jacob, is the more you surround them, showing them that you are understanding them, you want to learn and understand them, you want, to show them that love, because they are in that way of just wanting to be understood. And that's where I can see, the difference with Jacob in an environment, when he's in an environment, and I see that in him, when he's in an environment where there's people that embrace him, you see our children, they feed on energy, especially, I know mums with children who are, and Jacob for a little while, he didn't start speaking till he was 5, 6, so the speech delay. So I really do feel there is something in our children that feed on energy of people. And I see it in Jacob, that when there are those that we meet who just immediately just have a heart in just understand, because there are those that want to understand. They see our children and think, they're intrigued and they're interested. And I really see that Jacob feels that energy from people. So when I see that he feels that, and then you see that how comfortable he feels, that's all they want. It's just to be understood. Don't we? We all want to be understood, don't we? So, I think parents that just don't you know, and that's, as you said, the information that's out there. There isn't enough information to guide us as parents either. When a child is diagnosed with autism, they just say your child is autistic, and then that's it.
You're basically left on your own.
You're left on your own, and there is a lot of work that the NHS are actually looking into about that. I think that there isn't enough.
So that brings to focus now, with the lack of information. What would you say concerning, because so many health system in this country, we keep on hearing the government keep on cutting funding that is going to help children like Jacob and others who have disability or have speech impediment. What is your opinion as a mother who has a child that needs assistance, and it is no one single-handed mother or father can do this without the supporting system in place? What do you think about the way the government is dealing with this whole situation? Because they just keep on cutting funding, but they don't realize they are hurting people's children, they are hurting and destroying people's family because they are not putting the funding in the right places.
Yeah, and that's just where, you know, it's affecting, you know, the health services, the education system as well. You know, the education system is where they could do so much more in trying to educate, celebrate our children. You know, they take our children into the schools, they get funding from the children coming into these schools, but then they're not given the trade, that where there's nothing really to show, or there's no accountability about this money and this funding that come into schools to do more in educating.
If I should cut you short, are you speaking directly to the private sector? So like a private school, let's say that the government is issuing funding to, and you're saying the programs that they have in those institutions doesn't match up the funding.
No.
Wow.
No, it doesn't. That's the thing, accountability. They can send children into schools, into mainstream schools, with extra funding because they have a disability. But I don't think that there is enough accountability as to how that money is being spent specifically on our children to make a difference and to impact children and families. So that's where, for me, the government is fine. If they say that, you know, they can cut back, is what they've been doing for years, but on the money that does go into the school systems, the money that does go into the healthcare systems, where is the accountability to make sure that the money is being spent the right way?
So that the children in whom the money should be targeted, that they really get the really benefit of that resource.
And that's exactly it. And we don't see that there is, we know, so there's a good amount of money that goes into a school for each child with an educational health and care plan, a disability. But then we don't feel as parents that we see where that money is really going on that child, because that child needs specific resources to help them learn, specific training maybe of the staff around that child, and we go in with the illusion that they have got funding for that, but we don't see where there's nothing that comes back to us to specifically say this is where that money is going to be spent on that child then. So, you know, there's the cutbacks, but then there's no management then around the funding that goes into schools for our children, you know, to give that reassurance that change is happening or there's work being done around our children to help them, you know, with the right resources, with the right support system, our children can thrive. I'm seeing that. I thank God every day that Jacob is now in a special needs school. I put him in a mainstream school with Hannah, thinking that was the best thing to keep them in a school together, because I felt that was the need at that time. But the mainstream just didn't work for Jacob. It didn't. Even though it was a school that had a deaf resource base, so he was around other children who were deaf, which helped him with understanding his deaf identity for the first 2 years. But then, as I said, the learning gap was getting bigger and bigger. So Jacob's learning needs were being missed. Because again, so where was the funding Where was the funding to make sure that that gap was being helped with his
Yeah,
learning?
so that speaking almost like a one-on-one
Yeah.
teaching, to really address that child needs, as opposed to teaching an entire class whilst that
Exactly.
child or other children have been left behind
Exactly.
because they are not targeted based on their needs. And this is something this is one of the messages we want to send out, that the government needs to put the checks and balances in place, that the funding that they issue out, that the children that deserve it the most, that it is reaching them, and that is very important, because that would mean you as a mother who is struggling and trying to make ends meet and stuff like that, you would have to do other things to supplement, to try to boost up and to make your child to develop, whilst that child is going to a school where that child should be getting that kind of attention,
education,
and it's not getting.
Every other child. That's the thing. They talk about inclusion all day long. They love to use the word inclusion because they
conveniently that is.
Because they're bringing our children into the school, so they are including our children. But then it doesn't match up, because then they're not being included, that they deserve the same level of education as every child in that school. So that same level of education that that child needs in that school is that they need the extra resources and the right kind of support around them, because they've got the right to learn and they've got the potential to learn like every other child. So now Jacob's in a special needs school, because the curriculum is not dated like it is, unfortunately, isn't it? The education system, the curriculum hasn't changed over many, many years. So even though our children go into mainstream schools, the curriculum's not changing enough for that child to be able to then learn the way they need to learn, which is in a different way to a typical developing child. So Jacob in a special needs school, the curriculum's relaxed. They still follow, but it's in a way that there's no pressure. And so that it's an environment now that he can get up and move around, and he can learn in his musical way, and he's having fun, and a child needs that environment. Because I thank God, every day when Jacob gets on his school bus to go to that school, he's a happy child, because he's going to an environment that accepts him, he's embraced, he's celebrated, and just those key things around him. He's now reading, he's now writing. Like I said, he's 12.
So basically, he's in an environment where he can thrive.
He's thriving.
So I have about 2 more questions for you. So with where Jacob is now, how has that changed your perspective as a mother and your outlook in just society on a whole? Because there are people who may not have the privilege to appreciate, as a mother, your perspective on having a child with disability, because not everybody embraces children. I see people on the street, sometimes they make fun out of children, and even senior people who probably have some form of disability, some people make fun. It's a very negative stigma. And how has Jacob changed you as probably who you once used to be, and now how you see things?
It's a journey that has opened my eyes so much more to the world, society, people's perception on others who are different. Yeah, you're right. And I still go through it. Going into restaurants, and Jacob will not sit as Hannah would sit down, and people's how impatient people are, and that is an ongoing challenge. And I can speak on many mums. There are mothers that don't even really take their children out because of the way we are looked at.
Basically, you can use that word bully.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's right. There's the perceptions that are made. If Jacob gets up and he has a bit of a moment and he expresses himself with a bit of frustration, then you're looked at that you don't know how to deal with your child. but they don't know that that's not just the fact
A
that
normal child.
yeah,
That
it's
child.
not that child needs a different kind of attention, and he's expressing himself in a way that he feels he only knows how to at that time. So it has changed my views on society, even those close to me as well around Jacob. That's really been an eye opener. In there isn't enough patience, there isn't enough awareness, celebration of our children. So there's just not enough understanding, and it's a shame that
Hold that for there.
Yeah.
I think you said something there that is very significant that people need to realize. So it is one thing when it is happening to you outside of your circle, but you made point of people who are close to you, and it is important that people within your inner circle learn that it's already not easy on you, and they need to have that level of tolerance and patience, and embrace, as opposed to have that kind of mentality that really just does not order well.
But it's an example of just society in itself, whether they are external, whether they are close. There is that immediate fear, I suppose, isn't there, of what presents different. So where Jacob's the first child born in the family who's got a disability, who's deaf, it has been a real awakening to me around people's views that there isn't that intention then to want to understand difference. And that's just where the society, I think, does just fail in general, doesn't it? Because no one's really, the education isn't there. It's not in the education system. It's just not there to then think, well, let's just be patient and have a want to learn about others that are different. It's just, there's so much that needs to be done in that way, because you're right, if it's not happening in your own, and there are many that can share that, because it's just being able to feel comfortable with the uncomfortable, isn't it? So it's different, it's not what you're used to, but why not be inquisitive and have an intention to want to understand them, and to just, be there with, to be there, to be in an environment, to be in a room, to learn about a child with a disability and have a better understanding. There is just still too much apprehension around differences, and I speak to adults with autism, and when you listen to their journey, it makes me feel even more that there's so much more that I need to do in protecting Jacob, that when he grows like these young men who've gone through so many challenges in the education system, again with their families, so it shows that there's so much that needs to be done in opening up the conversations and creating the awareness that's needed, and making it to be seen, for our children to be seen more. Our children need to be seen more, and maybe for our families to speak more.
Quickly, I was just, as you were speaking, I was also just thinking of you as a mother with a child with a disability. Do you think, in terms of public space and the preparation for children with disability, because you would have to take your child out sometimes, maybe to the park, maybe certain places, but do you believe that enough has been done to upgrade our facilities that children with disability can feel just as relaxed and as happy as a normal child? What say you on that?
Well, I think that's when you mentioned about the government funding, ways and there could be ways to create better understanding, trying finding ways to change the language around our children and those with disabilities, so that it's just creating better awareness publicly, and to make it, again, it's just not spoken. People don't feel that they are comfortable speaking about it enough. And if the government was to do things which more publicly starts to address things, even in the NHS, for them to do more in in talking about it more, so that it starts to make people, it starts to open up the conversation. I think, just more open up of the conversations. And I think you're right, until it starts to come from higher levels, that then we can keep trying to talk as parents, you're right, and in our networks and helping and supporting each other.
But if nothing is happening,
nothing's happening at other levels that we could then support in listening to us, understanding more needs to be done, and then funding that can go with it. Yeah, there's definitely so much more that, in forcing the government to take some more responsibility. Because when you talk to young adults who've got autism and they've gone through such a struggle in their life of just wanting to be understood, and wanting to just get on with life like everybody else should be entitled to. But like you're saying, because they are looked at in certain ways, there's that bullying, there's that and it impacts their life, it impacts their world so much that
in a very negative and insensitive way as well. But Teresa, it has been amazing. I mean, I just have to see that as part one, because I think there's so much more that we can talk and discuss about. There's more in terms of your journey, not just only with your children, but even your own personal story. So I guess when we meet again, we're gonna go a little deeper in other areas. And I want to say thanks for being on the journey to the kingdom with Ken. And I want to say thank you for coming and appreciate. And we're going to take it further next time.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.